Eyemouth on the North Sea, 40 miles south of Port Seaton. And for me, it still is one of the most beautiful places in the whole world.
Soon after John and I started going out together, he took me to meet all his family in Port Seaton. After that, he couldn't wait to take me to Eyemouth as well, to meet his adored grandparents. There was no family car, and so we planned to go with their friends, Anne and Robbie Jarran, in the back of their fish van. On the appointed Sunday in January 1963, we all piled into the van, Robbie driving, John's father Dick in the passenger seat, Robbie's wife Anne, John's mum Nancy, his sister Margaret, John and myself, all crammed in the back. There were no seats, only a cushion protecting our seized-up muscles from the bumpy road over the moors by St. Abbs, and the inside of the van was all we could see. Humour was our only antidote to the spine-jolting, bone-crushing agony. Home Street in Eyemouth is a street of fishermen's houses that runs up from the shore, built into a steep incline. Number 10, where Grandma and Grandpa lived, was at the top. We entered a small, shadowy sitting room and found them sitting either side of the coal fire. I recognised the sweet face I'd seen in college drawing exhibitions. This was the adored Grandma, whose likeness, titled The Bereaved One, now hangs in the Scottish National Gallery of Modern Art in Edinburgh. John produced many tender portrayals of her, sleeping, reading, knitting, or just sitting. The Bereaved One, an oil of her reading her Bible after Grandpa's death, makes her look rather stern. I see this more as the earnestness of her prayer, as I never saw any trait in her that was not the essence of gentle, loving kindness. Grandpa's name was Alexander Maltman, and he was known to all as Sonny, or Sonny Matt. Grandma was Margaret, but called Meg. The talk was all of the fishing, the market, the catch, the skippers and crew, and always of prime importance the weather. They were in their 80s by now, and Grandpa was of course retired, but those lifelong issues were naturally still uppermost in his mind. The fire was stoked, and Grandma busied herself making the lunch. An oil portrait John had done when he was 16 and still at school hung above the dining table. It was of Grandpa sitting in an armchair. There were also family photos arranged about the room, and as in any family home, many objects of sentimental value on display. Behind the living room there was a tiny kitchen with a baby belling for cooking on, and a small sink. From the kitchen, the door to the yard opened adjacent to the outside lavatory. In the yard was the wash house and the drying sheds for the nets, and on the outside of the building was a wooden staircase up to the garret. From the top of those stairs, one could look over the high walls of the yard onto the tombstones of the graveyard next door. John told me that when he was younger and playing with his Eyemouth friends, if the ball landed in there, no one wanted to go in and retrieve it. They were afraid of the ghosts that were waiting for them. On the other side of the front door from the living room was the main bedroom, and leading off that towards the back was another tiny room with just enough space for a double bed. Primitive conditions perhaps, but as the memories come flooding back, they are not ones of deprivation, but of abundance of everything that is good in life. As I did in Port Seaton, I felt at home here, with this family into which I had been so warmly welcomed. After lunch, and before the light began to fade, we went on the customary Sunday afternoon stroll round the harbour. Eyemouth is a naturally beautiful place. Sheltered by high sandstone cliffs and guarded by the treacherous Harkers, rocks like sharp teeth rising out of the waves. The harbour mouth stood at one end of a small sandy bay where on good days swimming and family picnics were popular. Great skill and an obliging tide were needed to negotiate the hurkers, but on top of that, in order to reach home safely, the boats had to cope with the perilously narrow harbour entrance that would be widened in the future. Overlooking the harbour, up on a grassy bank, stood the imposing structure of Gunsgreen House, designed by John Adam in 1753. The house had played many roles in the life of the town, including a significant contribution to smuggling in years past. Now it was a boarding house where John's mother had worked as a young woman. After a final cup of tea at Home Street, it was back into the van for the return journey to Port Seaton. From now on, we would visit Eyemouth regularly and often, travelling by the same means. It was always a bit of an adventure and never failed to be a special outing full of hilarity and good memories. John had been bewitched by Eyemouth from the earliest days, and the impact it made on him never diminished. The history and heritage of the place was in his blood, and one of his most treasured possessions that he kept by his bedside was the Disaster Book, a well-worn account by the Reverend Daniel McKeever of the Eyemouth disaster, when in 1881, the year that Sonny Matt had been born, a freak storm had suddenly blown up, drowning most of the adult male population as their boats attempted to reach harbour. Whenever the chance arose, John would get Grandpa and Grandma to sit for him as he drew or painted them. They were endlessly patient and would usually fall asleep before he was finished. Grandma would always have the same thing to say when she saw the resulting work. "Oh, that's awfully fine, son." "Aye, vera good," would be Grandpa's retort. If they were adored by John, he was truly adored in return. John died in August 2013, and in the aftermath of his passing, I would often talk to him in my mind. This is one of many conversations I had with him as I travelled home to Scotland some time afterwards. Yesterday, I left my home in East Anglia to go on my favourite journey that I do often and always, driving up the Great North Road that takes me back home. On the long road from England to Scotland, I always make the detour, turning off just after crossing the border at Bournemouth, to Eyemouth, that special place, just as you did on your own very last journey home to Scotland, when you were being brought to your funeral. Since then, I never arrive or leave Scotland without going there to Eyemouth. It is a pilgrimage. Love takes me there. Since you died, many are the days when I'm saddened by my inability to feel your presence around me. But there in Eyemouth, I always know I'll find you. Grandma and Grandpa, and the rest of the dear family too. I hear the voices. I feel the kindness. When I arrived there last night, it was twilight, and the last gleam of light was leaving the sky. I stopped in our usual place, high up above Gunsgreen House, overlooking the harbour and the lovely old town. Your beloved Eyemouth. It was glimmering in the stillness of the fading light. I wanted to share that moment with you as we'd done so often together since we were young. Last night I so wanted you there with me again. I was aching with the pain of losing you, and of knowing that now I would only ever come there on my own. Never again with you.
By the storm-torn shoreline, a woman is standing. The spray strung like jewels in her hair, and the sea tore the rocks near that desolate landing, as though it had known that she had stood there. For she has come down to condemn that wild ocean for the murderous loss of her man. His boat sailed out on Wednesday morning, and it's feared that she has gone down with